Let me tell you, there's nothing that feels creepier than like caressing the hair of a small person. Hello friends, and welcome to my channel for another custom figure and vehicle build. Today we're going to be making a 1/12 scale Mystery Machine, Daphne, and Scooby-Doo. You may have seen this van before. A lot of people customize it. It's the Cowabunga Carl van from the 2007 TMNT CGI movie. A lot of people have turned this into the Channel 6 news van for their Ninja Turtles, or a van for the Punisher. I've always wanted to customize one of these because it's based on one of my favorite vans, a late 60s Dodge A100. But I didn't want to do the same thing that everyone else had done. And I was just kind of waiting on something to do with it. And then it hit me that I should do a Mystery Machine. Now, I'm not historically like the biggest Scooby-Doo fan in the world, but I did really love it as a kid. And as I've mentioned before on the channel, the centerpiece of my collection is iconic vehicles and the characters that drive them. So recently I made John Wick and his Mustang for the second time, actually. I've got several Batmobiles. I sort of kit bash scratch built a tumbler for my NECA Batman Begins figure. But the thing about them is that like they're all black or gray, right? Kit from Knight Rider that I made, black. Batmobiles, black and gray, right? So I wanted to have a pop of color, and I thought, what better way than a Mystery Machine? So we're gonna strip this thing down, take it apart, give it a good cleaning, and then paint it. Let's get everything out in front of the camera, take a look at what's going into this, and then we'll get to it. Okay, taking a look at the character supplies. So first and foremost, I decided to make Daphne because I didn't want to use like the scarce male bodies that I have. You know, they're getting harder and harder to come by. And I didn't want to use those on like Shaggy or something, right? And I don't really have many female characters in my collection because, you know, let's face it, they don't make that many female action figures, at least in like a cloth 1/12 scale. You know, there's not really like an abundance of blank bodies to use for them either. So I went with one of these Fison bodies because I love the seamless articulation. I mean, these things are actually incredible. It's like a little person in your hands. It's wild. And they're not that expensive. It was like 35 bucks, I think, for the body. Now, I already put the clothes on her because these do come anatomically correct. And so I didn't want to get flagged on YouTube for showing something I shouldn't. So I found the clothes on eBay from China. And I got some leggings for her too that I got to put on. And then I'm going to cut her hair to be, you know, about this length. I have these glasses that I got from GPS Lot, and they're various scales for action figures, and it's like a little piece of like thin sheet metal, maybe aluminum or something. So you pop them out and put them on. For her shoes, this was going to be the hardest part, and I remembered that I had a Marvel Legends Sif from Thor the Dark World. So I popped the feet off of her, and they're pretty much the same size as the feet on this one. So these are like a silicone body with a metal skeleton underneath, similar to the new Batman 89 figure from Mezco. But yeah, I mean, articulation is super smooth. It can pretty much bend any way a person can, and then some. It's pretty incredible. And then for Scooby, this is a Conversation Classics, I think it's called, Great Dane figurine. It's a little undersized. You know, Great Danes are huge dogs. I mean, realistically, a full-grown Great Dane would probably come up to here on a woman who's like 5'2", 5'3". So he's a little undersized, but you know, could be a young Scooby. You know, Scooby Begins or whatever. So I'll need to paint the dog darker. This is what's called a fawn color pattern, but Scooby was all brown, and then he had those black diamonds right here. So I'm going to retain some of that and make a collar for him. Unfortunately, he doesn't articulate, but you know, what are you going to do? But it's a really nice looking Great Dane, so I'm excited about that. And then for the van, I picked up these decals on Etsy. The store was Mod Decor, but it's MODECOR. I'll try to put a link in the description below. She's got a bunch of cool Mystery Machine stickers in different sizes. You can get just the letters. You can get the letters with the green in the background. And then I got these flowers to be the kind of ones that go randomly along the van. All right, now this thing clearly has a bunch of decals that are gonna have to come off. I think some might be kind of easy, some are gonna be really difficult. So that is gonna be the most challenging part, I think, is getting all this stuff off. Once I do that, I'm gonna unscrew everything off the bottom and take it apart. I'm gonna try to separate all the different pieces, like these bumpers here, so I can paint those silver. I'm gonna do the wheels here, silver. It does have this like pizza hole because this thing was supposed to shoot pizza, so I am gonna have to try to maybe figure out a way to fill that in because I don't really care for that look. So I might cut a little piece of styrene and then use some smaller pieces, you know, to finish out this grill. I would like to try to put some actual light lenses in here. I have a Bratz car that I use for parts, and I think it's got lights that are about this size, so I'm going to try to replace those. So I love the dash here. I think this is a really nice looking dash, and I'm excited to clean it up and detail it. So yeah, we'll see if this thing comes out. I think it does. This is where you put your pizzas. I might try to rig up some kind of a center console thing just so it looks a little cleaner. This guy pops off. I gotta figure out how to take this mechanism out. This thing pops open to reveal like a little... As far as like painting this thing goes, I'm gonna just leave the interior as it is because it won't be displayed. I'm just gonna put some tinted windows on the back here and probably call it good. Which will save some time and, you know, just be a little easier. My goal is to make this look as much like a real Dodge A100 as possible. You know, there are some seam lines and stuff that wouldn't be on the real van, but you know, this is a toy. Also, this, I don't care for this height bump out, but I don't really see a way to do without that. So it does add some visual interest to the van, so I think that's fine. That's the van. Gonna get it all stripped and ready for paint. All right, checking in. Got this thing all disassembled and cleaned up. Forgive the mess. It took me about 3 hours to get all the stickers off, all the gunk from the backing of the adhesive on the stickers, disassemble it, strip, you know, all the parts off of it and everything. So I got it cleaned up. I vacuumed it out. There was, you know, animal hair and a couple bugs and stuff like that in there. As you can see, I've drilled a couple holes in here. That is because I took these lenses from my Bratz parts vehicle that I have, and they have these little tabs on them. Now this will just pop right in like so. So once these are all chromed out, it's gonna look really good. I'm also gonna have to patch this hole here. So patching this, patching that, and then this thing will be ready to prime and paint. So the van is drying outside. While that's drying, I've been working on a couple of things. I'm getting Velma, I called her Daphne earlier by mistake. I'm getting Velma pretty close to done. I cut her hair, and I'm fairly happy with how that turned out. It's, you know, I do cut hair in real life. I cut my own and cut the hair of my friends for a number of years, but you know, that's all like clipper fades and stuff. I don't have a lot of experience doing scissor cuts, so I was using those little metal glasses. They're pretty cool. Like you can see, I took this pair out to try to use for her, but they're very insubstantial, and I was worried they were going to fall off, and I lost them at 1.2, which was a real pain. But I had this pair of Laurie Strode glasses from the NECA Halloween figure from like one of the more recent movies, and they were just clear plastic, so I painted around the edges because they actually have, you know, like a plastic kind of lens effect to them, and that's what I want for this figure. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some messing with it to get it to the right place. That's much more what the look I want. Let me tell you, there's nothing that feels creepier than like caressing the hair of a small person like this when you're trying to flatten it down. I was messing with it earlier and I was just like shuddered at myself. I got these on. These were such a pain to stretch over like the silicone legs. Like it was so hard to get them on because they're super tight, but I got it done. I've also moved on to painting Scooby here. This is just a watered down brown. Again, from the army painter paints. Watered it down and I'm kind of washing it over the body. He's not going to need too much in the way of paint, so I want to keep it light. You can see some of the original coloring is still coming through. That's what I want, because I don't want this to be like just a solid matte brown. You want it to have some variations in it. So all right, so the van is painted blue, and I'm getting the masking done for the green part. Also, you can clearly see this like cowabunga thing from the sticker that was on here. I scrubbed the hell out of this with isopropyl alcohol, and I even sanded it a bit, and it still showed through. So I don't know if there's just some kind of thing in the adhesive that messes with the paint. I mean, it's got to be some kind of chemical reaction thing. There's nothing I can really do about it, unfortunately. Like this is several coats of paint on this, and it still shows through. So, and here's how I patched the grill. Basically, I cut a piece of styrene to fit in that space, and then I took a piece of the half round styrene and put it right here to help kind of bridge this gap. Once it's all painted, you know, this is going to be all chromed out, and then the grill will be black. That's really going to help unify everything. So okay, moment of truth. I have a mask on, so my voice might sound a little muffled because it's still pretty fumy, but I tried a trick that I did on my John Wick Mustang, if you saw that video, where I sprayed the blue first once I masked it off and then hit it with the green. And what that's supposed to do, it's a house painting trick I learned about online. It's supposed to fill in whatever bleed runs you're going to get with the base color first so that you get less bleeding. Yeah, that's pretty clean right there. Alright, let's hope the rest of it fared this way. Beautiful, look at that. That's so clean. Let's get the decals on here. The thing I love about these is you can see the letters are kind of raised a little bit. So that just adds like a nice substantial look to them. So I got on both sides here and I cut along this so that this could still open. Just so it, you know, looked correct to have the seam line there. All right, so I let this thing air out for a week and it still smells really strongly of spray paint. So, but a couple things. One, I forgot to put the flowers on, so I got to put the flower decals on. I did clear coat it with a gloss coat, and a couple things happened. One, the cowabunga started to disappear, which was great. It's back now, unfortunately. But two, you can see this streak right here, and there's some streaking here. In the places where I laid on the clear coat too thick, I think, it started to eat through the paint, which is, I've never had a clear coat dissolve the paint under it before. So fortunately, it's just on the top here. So I'm gonna have to mask this off again and then paint just the top and seal it again. Before I do that, while this thing is less fumy than it will be once I put fresh paint on it, I'm going to do the interior here. All right, and here we have it, the finished Mystery Machine with Scooby and Velma by its side. Super proud of this thing. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Let's do a little 360 here. Really happy with how the details turned out on the front. The grill and the headlight bezels and whatnot. As you can see, I retained like the handle in this little like punch pad thing. Because I thought that was actually kind of a cool thing for the Scooby Gang to use as well. And I'll get into how I made the tail lights here shortly. We've got our license plates on it that I custom made in Photoshop. So let's look at a different angle and take a closer look at the figures and the van. So first up here is Scooby-Doo, and I showed you the wash I did to turn him brown and also how I went about adding the spots to him. The collar is brown pleather. I painted it blue with some Angelus leather paint, and that's why it has that nice leathery quality to it. And I cut this little piece for the strap, and then I made the dog tag out of a piece of styrene that I cut into a diamond, painted gold, and drilled a tiny little hole into, and then I used pieces of jewelry wire for the metal like loop and stuff on it. I repainted his eyes brown like a dog's because they were just all black. He begged like a dog. Then I add some clear resin to them to make them shiny again. So yeah, very happy with Scooby. On to Velma. We saw most of her already, but here she is with her cut hair again. The flashlight is from some other figure. I think it's maybe like a Jim Hopper from McFarlane. Yeah, the shoes I made out of the boots from a MCU Sif. Painted them red and put the clear gloss varnish on them as well. All right, closer look at the Mystery Machine. As you can see, I added the weathering I was talking about. So there is some like mud and dirt splatter. I painted the wheels so that they were not shiny anymore. And they look more like a sort of, you know, matte rubber that you see on tires. I decided not to do the black line around the paint trim, like the green of these, because I don't know, it makes it look a little bit more cartoony. And I realized that this was a cartoon, but I wanted to do the more realistic version of it. And so not having the pinstriping around this stuff helped to make it just more realistic, and it scales better too, because if you make the line too thick, it makes this look more like a toy. I added some spray to the bumpers as well. Let's talk about the front here. I'm really pleased with how the grille turned out, as well as the headlight bezels, like I mentioned. Taking the headlight lenses from that Brad's car really helps sell the realistic look of these headlights. And then I'm really happy also with how that patch I made for the center bottom here worked out. So I think that works pretty well to bridge that little gap, because that's where the pizza would shoot out, if you recall. I made the marker lights out of action figure packaging plastic, like this stuff here, and then those little stick-on post-it things you use as like to you know, sign here on a document or whatever. We had some of those, and they were the right kind of color yellow, so I just used those and stuck them together and then put them on here. The license plate I printed out, and then I put some aluminum duct tape on the back of it just to give it a more rigid, like, you know, kind of metallic look if you end up seeing the edge. And then I put a piece of tape over it on the front, and then I cut them out so that they have a more reflective and thick look to them instead of being just like a thin sheet of paper. I chromed the window trim and the door handles. Now the tail lights, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for these, and what I ended up going with was these enamel dots that I got at the craft store. And you can see how I did a trial on some of these here. I started doing them on this pink one just because it was here, and I realized, oh, you know what, if I do yellow, that yellow will show through the red a bit more and it'll look a little bit more like I want it to. So I essentially painted over them with red acrylic, and then I used the clear gloss varnish to give them some shine. And so that's what you're seeing here. And they happen to fit in there pretty perfectly. I also chromed out this tailpipe with the Molotow chrome pen. I'm going to put a link in the description below for the chrome pens. They're really, really great for this kind of detailing. You can see I did the mirrors with them, the windshield wipers, the trim on the windshield. Now, we're going to change angles here, and I want to show you the interior. All right, here's a look at the interior of the cabin. So a couple things here. The mirror was really difficult. I couldn't get it out, so I had to basically paint it in place. So that was a challenge. So I painted it all black and then used the chrome pen on the reflective part. For the dash, it actually comes out. I couldn't get the steering wheel out, so I had to mask that off to paint it. But the dash came out, and on these old Dodge vans, the dash is usually the same color as the body because it's made from sheet metal as well. So I just masked off the parts that I wanted to keep black and that had like stickers on, like the gauge cluster, and then I painted it the same way I did the exterior of the van. And then I repainted this gear shifter with the chrome pen and then some black paint. So pretty happy with that. I put some faux carpet in there. As you can see here, it's that same jewelry box felt that I've used before, that I used on my kit from Knight Rider build and my John Wick Mustang, the original one I made. It works really well as like a scaled down fabric. I didn't go too crazy with trying to make it like super, you know, realistic. I just wanted something in there to kind of give it a little character. These are the seats as they came, so I didn't paint those at all. This bit here is actually a piece of a cardboard tube that I cut in half, and then I made a half moon piece to go in the front here and then covered it with the fabric. The reason I did that is because it was this weird kind of unsightly thing. This is where the pizza shooter was in the van originally. And these vans, the engine sat right about here, and they usually have kind of a center console compartment that covered it. So I just wanted to do something to kind of pay homage to what you see in the real thing. As this is going to be displayed, it's not going to be tipped open like this, and I didn't want to go through the trouble of cutting out and hinging the doors because it's not really going to factor into how I display this. So it'll be shut like this at all times anyway, but you know, I do like knowing that it's in there, and that if you do get down and look, you can see that it has kind of a believable interior. And it doesn't always work out for me to do this because some of the vehicles I do don't have interiors, but here are Velma and Scooby inside the van. That's pretty fun. She's a little small for it just in terms of reaching the steering wheel, but Scooby's a perfect size, and he just looks right at home as a dog, sticking his head, you know, looking out the window through the windshield at what's going on. Perfectly alert. So that's pretty fun. And since this team up has happened before, here they are with Batman. Yeah, and this also gives you an idea of scale. If any of you have the new Mezco 89 Batman, you can see that they're pretty firmly in a 6-inch scale. As I mentioned, Scooby's a little small, but this was the largest relative to 1/12 scale Great Dane I could find. So, but I think it works, you know, like I said, maybe he's a little bit younger here, not a fully grown Great Dane yet, but yeah, there you have it. So that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you all so much for watching. This was a lot of fun. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. I'm doing this kind of thing regularly. Usually a couple times a month, I'm posting a video of a custom figure, custom diorama, custom vehicle, combination of both. I've got a lot more fun stuff coming up. We're going to be customizing the new McFarlane 89 Batmobile as soon as it gets here. I plan to build a bat cave for that on the channel. I'm going to be doing an updated collection tour video since the last one I did was several months ago, and I've got a lot of new stuff and finished a lot of new customs since then. At the end of this, you're going to see a brief trailer for my graphic novel account. It's my sci-fi reimagining of the Count of Monte Cristo. It's got a little bit of a Star Wars vibe. There's swashbuckling action, cool vehicles, androids. It's all about revenge and redemption, and I would love for you to check out the book. There's a link in the description below. If you have any questions about anything I use in the video, feel free to drop them below as well in the comments. I'm happy to answer any of those. I'll also be linking to some of the supplies that I used, like the Fison body, the chrome pen, various other stuff that went into this build. So I'll do it for this one. Until next time, keep your head on swivel.